Prosperity Buddhism in Burma, Myanmar. My name is Niklas Foxeus. I'm an associate professor, docent in Swedish, and a researcher and a senior lecturer affiliated with History of Religions, Department of Ethnology, History of Religions and Gender Studies at Stockholm University. In 2011, I received my PhD from that department. My specialization is Burmese Buddhism. Since 2011, I have conducted research within 3 postdoctoral research projects funded by the Swedish Research Council, Vetenskapsrådet in Swedish, and the Royal Swedish Academy of Letters, History and Antiquities, Kungliga Vitterhetsakademin in Swedish. In 2013 and 2015, I conducted research on prosperity Buddhism in Burma in a project funded by the Swedish Research Council. This lecture is based on my own research, on fieldwork. My lecture deals with the situation in Burma, Myanmar, before the military coup of February 1st, 2021. Prosperity Buddhism in Southeast Asia and East Asia. The quest for prosperity and wealth have long been an integral part of so-called karma Buddhism. Birth into a wealthy family and economic abundance of people are mostly interpreted as signs of considerable karmic capital acquired in previous lives. In connection to Buddhist merit-making rituals, Buddhists can make mundane wishes, including a wish for wealth that might be realized in an indeterminate but mostly remote future, depending on the karmic capital of the giver. When encountering economic or health problems, Buddhists may engage in karmic merit-making by giving alms, it's called dana in Pali, to monks to improve their karmic balance. However, many feel that this method to improve their lot is too slow and uncertain, and therefore they turn to spirits and other supernatural beings. These serve as a kind of a shortcut to economic success and prosperity. In the novel prosperity cults, devotees expect rather immediate results, mostly within a few weeks. Karmic discourse, in terms of achieving access through one's own karmic history, tends to be downplayed in these cults. While traditional Burmese Buddhism that focus on merit-making and monks can be said to include a degree of what Jörn Borup calls soft prosperity Buddhism, the novel cults rather cultivate a hard prosperity Buddhism that is entirely focused on gaining wealth and prosperity. In this lecture, I will reserve the label Prosperity Buddhism, which I invented for the Burmese cults, for cults promoting the hard form of prosperity Buddhism. In Burma, Myanmar, people have long turned to the traditional spirit or Nat cult of the 37 lords for economic success, health, and protection. In most historical periods throughout the world, people have turned to local spirits, saints, or gods, wishing to gain prosperity, wealth, good harvests, protection, and health, thereby giving a return gift if their wish is granted. However, religious cults focusing on prosperity have become more widespread since the 1990s, not merely in Burma, Myanmar, but globally. Since the late 1980s and the early 1990s, cults characterized by the hard form of prosperity Buddhism and similar forms of prosperity religion have emerged throughout Southeast Asia and East Asia, including Thailand, Burma, Myanmar, Vietnam, Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. Like some other scholars, I view this emergence of religious cults focused on prosperity, success in business, wealth, and health as being linked to the global spread of capitalism after the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s. According to the anthropologists Sean and John Komarov, such a conjunction of religion and economic practices in evolving market economies or capitalism have emerged globally, since that time. In that way, an interplay between local economic reforms and a global spread of capitalism have created conditions for the emergence of the popularity of cults that focus on prosperity, wealth, success, and health. The novel cults emphasize the instrumental dimension of religion rather than the soteriological aspects. These are pragmatic forms of religious practice and forms of lived religion that relate to everyday concerns and problems. Many cults in Southeast Asia and East Asia are related to local spirits that are expected to help their devotees to gain economic success. The Buddhist emphasis varies between different countries and seems to be most pronounced in Burma, Myanmar, Thailand, and Japan. Accordingly, I use the terms prosperity religion and prosperity Buddhism to distinguish them. The novel cults do not represent a resurgence of religion, which is a common notion in the scholarly literature of the relevance of religion in modernity. Instead, they rather constitute, these cults, a transformation of existing rituals, concepts, notions, and practices with a specific focus on economic success and material gratification. Thereby, other more soteriological practices tend to be downplayed that may seem less relevant in the changing economic landscape, with new opportunities that create new expectations. For instance, in Burma, the Vipassana movement, the insight meditation movement, in which the practitioners expected to achieve at least the lower stages of awakening and insight on the path to nirvana, or Nibbana in Burmese, was very popular in Burma during especially the socialist Ne Win period, 1962 to 1988. But its popularity has dwindled since the 1990s. The development of novel cults of hard prosperity Buddhism in Burma, Myanmar should be situated in the social, political, and economic transformations the country has undergone since the 1990s. In 1988, the planned economy of the socialist government under General Ne Win collapsed, and the military junta, Slork SPDC, that ruled between 1988 and 2011, seized power and implemented modernization projects, including a limited market economy. In 2011, a semi-civilian and semi-democratic government under President Thein Sein began to implement democratic reforms and a further liberalization of the market economy. In interplay with these changes and globalization, forms of prosperity Buddhism that are intrinsically linked to consumer culture began to evolve. After 2011, when the country began to open up, access to merchandise increased dramatically, and an evolving consumer culture created new desires and shaped identities. And the consumption has increasingly become a driving force behind these cults in urban areas in Burma.